Hello, partners. Hey, yes, this is the story of the little man who owned an island. You know, all the people we've profiled since day one of these reports were people who helped to build this nation. Well, in this report, for a strange reason, my researcher and writer Dennis Daly has prepared a profile of a man who wanted to help overthrow this nation. Did you hear what I said? Profile a man who wanted to what? Yes, you heard me correctly. Dennis wants us to know about an early American who wanted to overthrow this nation. Now, Jimmy, why would Dennis want to talk about a traitor? I didn't say traitor, but I'm glad you asked. According to Dennis, this person wasn't exactly a traitor. He was just a little confused. He was a little man, very confused. You see, this guy was not from this country. He'd come to the United States from England less than 5 years after the new United States of America had gotten off the ground. Now, I'll slow down. You see, there was a side to this little man you have to know. Even though he was British, he lived part of his life in Ireland. Because there was so much resentment between the Irish and the British, this man came to America with a lot of mixed feelings about the powers of government. So it wasn't odd that when he was approached by one of the really off-the-wall politicians of the era, he quickly decided he'd help the man do what he wanted. Huh? Well, wait, listen. Sadly, he quickly learned it was the most unfortunate decision of his life. Jimmy, I'm lost. First you say you were going to highlight a man who was nearly a traitor. Now you say he became a good friend of a man who can only be described as a political outcast. Are you sure? Well, let me ask you again. Are you really sure there's a moral to this story? Well, I know this is getting complicated, but if you just hang around with me, I think you'll enjoy the payoff when we get to the end. You see, the off-the-wall politician who reached out to our subject in this week's report was Aaron Burr. Aaronburr. Aaron Burr had been a controversial vice president under Thomas Jefferson. He's best remembered as having shot to death Alexander Hamilton during a duel over political and personal issues. Yeah, I can see how he was controversial vice president under anybody, much less Thomas Jefferson. Go on. All right. Well, by the time that the subject of our report had settled in the United States, he had used a sizable fortune he had inherited to buy an island in the Ohio River. Good lands! That's right. He bought an entire island. The island is today about 2 miles downstream from Parkersburg, West Virginia. Now, the reason that Aaron Burr wanted to make friends with today's subject was that this immigrant from England not only had money, as I said, he even owned an island. You see, partners, Aaron Burr wanted to start his own revolution. He wanted to overthrow the new American system of government. He thought the best way to do this would be to hire a navy and hide it somewhere away from Washington. Finding someone with money and his own island in the Ohio meant that Burr's navy could easily sail down the Ohio into the Mississippi and finally attack New Orleans. Jimmy, Would it be possible to mention our hero's name? You keep hiding it. Okay. Partners, the reason I left this name to the last is that once I tell you his name, well, you'll likely smile, then frown, then shrug your shoulders. Okay. His name was Harmon Blennerhassett. Let me say that again. Yes, Jimmy, please do. Harmon Blennerhassett. And the reason Dennis wanted you to hear about his name in this report is twofold. First of all, Dennis thinks that Harmon Blennerhassett is likely the best example of someone who made history who has never been in it, is totally left out of the history books. And Dennis had a close tie to Blennerhassett since he was in college. Wait a minute, you are confusing us. All right, you see, Dennis learned about Harmon Blennerhassett from his favorite college history professor. In the last 1960s, Dennis called a museum that still exists on what is now called Blennerhassett Island to see if he could get more information about Blennerhassett. Dennis mentioned that he had written a poem about this man. What? Yeah. He sent the poem to the museum, and Dennis Daly's poem now hangs in the lobby. Here is Dennis's poem. He whose island midstream stands, let us never pass it. Park the boat and call ashore for Harmon Blennerhassett. With whom can we share our praise, or whom can we mass it? Wave a flag and call the name of Harmon Blennerhassett. I got more. Friend to plan of Aaron Burr, he had cursed those who harass it. He made a name, but fell from fame. He fell in flame. He made a name, but fell from fame. He's Harmon Blennerhassett. Partners, it's likely that Dennis Daly is the only person who had the nerve to try to find some words that rhyme with Blennerhassett. So, the next time you come across someone who thinks he or she knows a lot of history, a lot of American history, let's make it, ask them to tell you what they know about Harmon Blennerhassett. The odds are they'll just greet you with a blank stare. So, another lost face in the complicated story of America. The man who owned an island, Harmon Blennerhassett. Can you imagine my buddy, Dennis Daly, researcher and writer, living in Palm Springs right now, has a poem in the museum of our honoree, I'm going in for a fitting. He has a poem. He's living in Palm Springs right now. This poem is in the museum of our honoree. I still can't say it, but that's all right. Don't worry about it. Click the box with the red X and go back to the report page. Hey, this has been a fun time talking about Blennerhassett, thinking that Dennis even knows the professor knew about him and everything else. All right, I love you. Go get 'em, Tigers. Click that red X.